It's high noon up and down the Wasatch Front, and Scotty and the coach are just getting started.
I'm doing really well, thank you. Not as well as Tim, but I'm doing really well today.
It's a good day today, Coach.
I'm really happy for you, big fella. I can remember those days driving in the middle of nowhere on our way to recruit kids or watch games in the summer. You talked about someday wanting to have your own radio show. I thought you were kind of crazy, but
you already knew that.
Yeah. So I'm happy for you. Good luck to you.
This is Scotty G and the coach, Tim Lacombe, presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. Scott Gerard, Tim Lacombe. First show, Coach. 2 hours under your belt. How you feeling?
Well, I haven't been fired yet. I saw he's wearing a pink shirt today, Lloyd, but it's not a pink slip. So I'm 2 hours in. I'm doing good. I'm loving it. I'm just kind of in awe of sitting next to Scotty G.
Oh, stop. All right. Hey. Joining us now, he is the owner of the Utah Jazz and the Utah Mammoth. Mammoth coming off a tough loss last night in Game 1 of the NHL playoffs. But, Ryan, we can't thank you enough for hopping on with us. Kind of set the scene of what last night was like. It had to be surreal as the guy that just 2 years ago found a way to bring this team to Salt Lake City, and then all of a sudden you're playing in the playoffs.
Hey, guys, I would not miss Mr. Tim's maiden voyage for anything. You got a good one there.
Yeah.
Holy cow, this is so fun. I hope Utah sports is prepared for what they're going to go through for the next however long, but it's cool. So let's start there, Scotty.
Yeah, I love it. Love it.
It's going to be super fun. I can't wait to get all of the sub characters that Tim's going to develop over the years and impersonations, and we're in for a good ride. So happy to be on. Look, last night was I think it's new for our group. Like it's you got to get in the arena at some point. Why not us? Why not us now? I mean, I think you look at how many firsts there have been with this organization. And it's something I told the guys the first day I met them. I told the guys when we finished the regular season this year that, being part of a bunch of firsts is probably one of the coolest things that you can be a part of in your career. And last night was a first for a lot of our younger guys and even some of our older guys. And so I thought they responded really well. I thought they were prepared. They knew where it was. I think what you saw in the third is probably what Vegas wants to do. Hang around. And, one weird pass or one little moment in your own zone. And that's kind of where they capitalize. They probably give up a few bombs down the ice where we've got some, our speed takes off. And I think that's probably how they want to play. And so I don't know what it looked like on TV, but sitting down there on the glass last night, that was a different sport than we've seen in the regular season.
A little more intensity, you say, in the playoffs. And you and I see that in the NBA too. You watch all year long, and there'll be segments of the game toward the end where if it's close, you're going to see some serious play. But the playoffs coming, man, you see it from the start. And I saw that last night too. Ryan, what was the environment like? I saw you there out on Twitter shaking hands with all the Mammoth fans and, just being the cool dude you are. But what was it like being in the arena last night? What was the energy like?
Well, so I didn't know what to expect when I went down, but I would just see groups, like hundreds of Mammoth fans. And it's like, of course I'm going to go over and talk to them. I didn't know. I don't know who was recording, someone put something out, but it's such a moment, for us, that logo that you're wearing, Tim, or that I've got on my hat didn't exist 9 months ago. And we have an identity, we have a brand, we have something that people are proud of the Tuss Up signs going everywhere. We got a sign. And it was a good environment. It was a calm environment. It was loud. I think we'll be every bit as loud as they were, but I love it. They're chanting Utah sucks. It's like, great. We've arrived, right? They know we're onto something. And I think it's going to be a series. It's going to be a series. And I think that's the exciting thing about it. And look, we just got to grab one out of there.
The thing that I've really loved about the Mammoth experience here in Salt Lake City is not just the quality of the team and the players, but the experience of going to an NHL game. I got to imagine you feel that, game presentation's always been huge for SEG and what you guys have continued to build over there, but you got to ramp it up another level in the playoffs. I'm fired up to see what it's going to look like coming up later in the week here at Delta Center.
Yeah, I think hockey in general, because you've got that white backdrop of the ice, the lasers and the stuff in the show that you can put on, it's pretty good. I mean, I think you've seen us with the Mammoth and how we drop our ice cave that we come out through. It's pretty unique. I think we'll be turning up the Jazz as well this year. We made a significant investment on the Mammoth side to get everything ready. Part of the renovation will help us with some of the technical aspects of doing this. And it's a good time. It's a good time. I think all of us are realizing that, one more thing to cheer for, one more thing to look at. I mean, last night, I'm just like, we scored our first goal and like, I'm standing up and just looking back at different pockets of Mammoth fans, and we're just signaling and cheering at each other. And like, it was just one of those moments. It was pretty cool. Look, I to the credit of Vegas, people can say what they want, but there was no data that hockey would work in Utah. There really wasn't. I mean, you look at how many rinks we had, a little bit of a youth program, outside being a cold weather sport, and, a smaller, Grizzly team that would work. Vegas gave me a lot of confidence of how it has transformed that community, that it would work here. We all know as Utahns the closeness, the proximity, the tie that we have to Las Vegas. My wife's from there. The similarities, the culture aspects. As you get out into Summerlin and this, there's a strong tie. Like we're not cousins, but we're close. I mean, Utah's. I spent a lot of days driving down there when I was younger, and knowing that culture would work and what it's done for not the Strip, but the rest of Vegas is what said, hey, well, if it works in Vegas, it's going to work in St. George. And if it works in St. George, it should work in Utah, like up northern Utah. Like, and it has, and I'm not sure that the Raiders have the following. I mean, actually, I know that as a newer team, like, or the baseball team that's coming there. I mean, it is Knightstown there.
Lloyd cringed. He's our producer and he's a Raiders fan, but it's okay. They haven't been good for so long that they just don't.
Hey, I'm heavily involved with the Raiders and love those guys there. Egon Durbin, who just took over, is kind of the heir apparent for the Raiders behind Mark Davis. Obviously, he's bought and purchased two companies, not only Qualtrics, but Entrada in Utah, and we're very, very close. And, I've become a Raiders fan too. So
let's go.
You're in good hands, I'll tell you that.
There you go. When you I remember hearing an interview with Mark Cuban back in the day, and he mentioned that under the old NBA rules, if he made a mistake on a player or made a mistake, on a signing or a trade, that he could just throw some money at it and it would be fine, and he could find a way to make it work. He said now the NBA is developed in such a way where you really, if you miss on something or you make a mistake down the line, you're going to pay for it for a long time. So there's really no room for error. So how difficult is that as you try to navigate through this offseason to make sure that you are, when you go all in and you have to hit?
Yeah, I think interesting that you bring up the past. Just since I've been in the league, as new CBAs are written, and you're going to see this in baseball here, the entire format of everything changes. And the problem as a fan is, like, growing up, I love the Stockton and Malone kind of loyalty and the way that they stuck with the team. We've only seen it a couple times in modern basketball, Steph Curry being one. And it's only going to get harder and harder as we go, just because the shortness of contracts, right? And so I think the first point is definitely around, like, building right now is very different than it's ever been. And we're all kind of going through it together with the second apron and how that looks, and player options and teams and just kind of how it all works out. The fundamental building blocks are still the same when it comes to personnel and building a team and putting it together. And for me, and there are massive risks of hitting, and, how are you going to be right? No one's right all the time. If I look at hiring in any job, I mean, the best I know are 50%. I think Oklahoma City, has done a pretty good job at building their organization, but, their process is, I want as many shots at it as possible so I can mess up more. And they've messed up. You can go through their draft picks and look at where are you now. There's quite a few top 10 picks that are not playing for them. And they've been able to do that. I think the one thing that's not talked about enough is financially, the risk that tears apart teams is more the financial component in today's cap system. If I were to say where the Jazz were when we took over, we were over a team, and a lot of people don't remember this. Like, we had an offseason where we had to sign Mike Conley. If we did not sign Mike Conley, the only amount of money we could spend was $9 million to go replace him with someone else. There was no way in the market that we were even going to come close to getting a Mike Conley replacement for that. And so you really get to a point when your salary gets high that you're kind of up against the wall a little bit. And then if you're down picks, the way out of that is to go down picks even further. So you really got to ask yourself and look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, is it worth going deeper into this to try to win, or do we go in a different direction? And you've seen all sorts of teams, go through and say, hey, I'm going to hang, I'm going to retool, and then they waste a couple more years and then go into a rebuild. And then you see teams that just keep hanging on, where playoffs are probably okay. It's okay. Let's just keep kind of trying to get into the playoffs. There's stories on every side of it. The good news is between Will and Austin and Danny, if you look at who we put around, there's a lot of rings in this group. And they've all done it kind of in a different way. And so if you look at the Boston teams that have come around, they went at it. They had to retool. They kind of had to rebuild, and they could get there. But they were really, really good. Will obviously was San Antonio. And then, obviously having Dwayne in the group, there's, that's ultimately the goal. I think personally, my direction to Danny and Austin would be very different if it was just playoffs. And I'm just not, that doesn't mean we don't have to go through and start somewhere and get in the arena, but my goal is to bring a championship to Utah. And we haven't had one. I want to hang a banner. And if it means that, we have to do stuff a little harder, okay. But we're not going to tiptoe in to go beat San Antonio and OKC. Like, we're not going to tiptoe in. Like, we're going to have to do it the right way and build the right way. And, that's going to be what it's going to take, and you never know. But I just try to put the smartest people around, and I just feel like we're super lucky that we got this group because, I'll just be honest. If they agree on things, I'm probably not going to stand in the way on anything that they come to, and that's typically how you want it. And it's actually the opposite. They'll call all the time and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" I just spent the last 2 days with Austin, and we've got really, really smart people here who also have that level of expectation. But all this is talk. We got to go do it, right?
Make game day yours. Tickets, food and drinks, stats, and streaming. Everything you need is in the Utah Mammoth app. Download today and make game night easy. Download on both Android and iPhone. Tusk Top.
Tell me what you've got such a great relationship with Danny and spent so much time with him, and then Austin came in this year. Just your observations of what it is. I mean, and I have the ability, I've known Austin forever. I kind of know the answer, but what do you see in Austin on a daily basis that what have you seen the change, I guess, that he's brought, or has there been a change at all?
So Austin is so first of all, the Ainge family and Danny's one of the greatest humans on the planet, but also he's just different. He's different than anyone right? I mean, there's one DA, and his ability, I always say he could run any business that we have. His ability to be a field player, to understand humans, understand teams, and the ultimate competitor is pretty unique, and have 47 years, but also be approachable, humble, and can relate with players, and has an incredible eye for talent. That's a pretty unique skill set, right? There's people that I've seen that have a few of those, but not all of them. And Austin comes at it, and I think people forget that Austin was a pretty good D1 basketball player, right?
And if you ask the right people, he was a player coach possibly too.
Yeah. Austin's a savant. I mean, Austin is very analytical in the way he processes stuff. Very much like you see some of the modern GMs in the NBA. He's very organized, extremely thoughtful, and goes through. But, and I know this, having the blessing to work with my dad for 10 years, who was probably a little different than I was, we end up cross-pollinating a lot for what we take away. And, if you look at Austin's skill set, this is my eyes, everyone's got their own read, but you look at the Danny influence there, just like if you look at my mother and my father couldn't be more opposite. My father is a brilliant scientist that sits down and thinks and comes up with ideas and everything. And my mother's like the Tommy Boy salesperson, right? You couldn't have more opposite people. You got like an Einstein type with a Tommy Boy salesperson type, and the kids are born somewhere in between on that spectrum. And if you're born more on my father's side, you're definitely more academic. But when you work, I was probably born more on my father's side or my mother's side, but working with my father, I kind of got drugged back towards the middle with that skill set. I think that that's the beauty of Austin. And there's nothing I'm more excited about than watching those two duke it out to see who they think the best person in the draft is, or the best free agent is, because I know they're going to come at it from different ways, but with that similar idea. And look, I just think we're both, I think as an organization, one of the things is consistency. One of the things is stability. And I don't think we could ask for a better group right now to kind of embody that stability and growth, but also people who have very, very high, goals. And Austin said that, like, my job's to stack good decisions on top of each other when he's come in. it's pretty cool. I like going to work right now.
I bet. And obviously the conversation that's kicked up about how to really rebuild an organization. And I thought you had some really good points with Pat McAfee the other day about under the current system, this is the way that you kind of have to rebuild. This is the way you have to retool a team. And if you want to change the rules, then maybe we should change how we try to rebuild teams and how you try to address these types of situations where a team has to strip it down a bit and build it back up, especially in a year where you might have a 2003-like NBA draft right in front of us. So how do you address this? How do you try to manufacture change in the NBA so that you can do it both ways, where you can avoid maybe the tanking situation, but also allow teams to rebuild in the way that they can and be competitive?
Yeah, I said the other day that every action has an opposite reaction. And so when you implement a CBA and free agency because of that CBA changes, the downstream effect in a star-driven league is it puts a lot more pressure on maybe one of the other ways to build, where you can get a star or stars or, get these franchise players, however they come. Trading's also super hard. One of the things that, I love about the NBA is the trade wire is always active. But, one of the things Danny said when he came in is like, hey, just to be honest with you, you're going to work 100 and maybe do one. And that's kind of been the case. And so, we were super fortunate with Triple J coming in and like being in a position to go do that, but also that Memphis wanted to go downstream a little bit and try to rebuild entirely, or whatever they're doing. I don't want to, put words on what they're doing, but they clearly were going in a different direction and going younger for this lottery, as we saw. And we were a little bit the beneficiary of that moment and timings there. So my whole thought is, and I've said this exact same thing in front of, 30, governors of the league, is like, we can flatten the odds. And I think I'm cool with that. Like, I think everyone's cool with that. But, if I'm another team, and we're going to have teams going through the rebuilding process all of the time, we just got to ask ourselves, how long do we want them to kind of be off the track? And I personally think that there's probably a couple teams that really deserved the number one pick last year, right? Because then they could get going. And you saw this a little bit with Charlotte. Charlotte started the year kind of not knowing what they had. They saw that they got something, and then boom, they're like, no. We're in a different spot than we thought. And so I think there's this philosophy or idea out there that anyone sitting in my shoes would ever not want to or would want to be in a, what I would say in a rebuilding process. No one wants to be in the rebuilding process. I know every one of these governors, they dread it like something like going to the dentist and having a root canal. Like, they don't want to do this. So if they're there, it's because it's the right thing. And I think that's the part of this that's a little like the incentives have kind of shifted that way. So we've got to make sure we still maintain the rebuild process for these teams, because the teams we're even watching right now that are competing are going to be in the rebuild process on the next cycle. And I think you can do both. I think you can do flat odds with everything else. So
one of the things we're going to try to do on this show with the connections that we have is, peel back the curtain a bit. And I just want to tell a quick story before we let you go. Ryan, I've known Ryan forever. And he actually, when we were talking earlier today, he said, I think when we met, you had more money than I did, which is probably true. But I think the thing, what was that?
I don't know that I said it that way, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
The principle.
No, the thing that's the coolest part of it is that I remember sitting on 18 with him at Riverside. We were just golfing one day. He got a text, and I won't go into the dollar figure, but Qualtrics, there was an offer for Qualtrics at the time, way early. And, me being Johnny on the spot thinking, man, let's do that so we can go get a plane and go to Vegas. I was like, you're going to do it? And he was like, kind of smiled at me, and he's like, Timmy, no. This is going to go for a lot more than that. But I just have to say, it just, a lot of people see you, but this is one of the greats. And I love what you're doing for our state, and I love the way that people are rallying behind it. The Mammoth going to pick one up. We're going to get one, and we'll see if we can make this a series. But it means the world you'd come on today, dude. I know you're busy, so thank you.
No, Timmy, we go way back. I remember sitting at BYU, and Timmy would always let me into practice because when I was just knee-deep in tech, I needed an outlet. I just needed something different. And I'd be like, Tim, I'm coming. What time are you practicing? And I'd just come over. I just needed something different. I didn't need to go to lunch with someone. I didn't need a lunch break. I just needed to get my brain on something else that got the juices flowing that in a different way. And then I'd go to games and, at BYU under your seats where I was fortunate enough to sit. This was during the Jimmer years, there was these little bags, and at the time, the caffeine policy was a little more rigid than it is now. But I would come out in a Coke school, and there would always be a Diet Mountain Dew in my bag without fail, because before the game, he would go and put that Diet Mountain Dew in there. And I thought, this is the greatest thing on the planet. Every home game. And couldn't be happier for you, man. I think those stories are going to come out. Or are we going to see Big Rick?
Oh, yeah, Rick's coming.
Oh, Rick. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Are we going to see that?
Yeah, we'll do
that. Have we
that.
explained? Does the general public know what this is or how this is going to happen or what?
Well, Big Rick. So Rick Majerus was at Utah. I was working for him, and then I did an internship with David Locke on the radio. And I started doing impersonations. David's like, oh, we ought to do that. So I became affectionately Big Rick, and nobody knew who it was, even Rick. And so I moved to Austin, Texas. Rick came to Austin. We went to dinner. He spent the whole evening. We talked, had a great time. He was getting out of my car, and he was closing the door, and he says, oh, if you use my voice on the radio another time, I'll break your neck, and shut the door.
Yeah, because I remember you would call in and be like, oh, it's Big Rick. And people didn't know if it was Majerus or not.
So good. So good.
I ordered one time. I was in a drive-through, so I just because it was good for radio, I ordered 17 things on the menu in the drive-through. I was like, hold on, David. And I just ordered 65 things.
Man, I remember Ryan Hatch. I was producing his show, and he set something up with you, and I'm like, who is this? He's like, I can't say. He goes, I've been sworn to secrecy because if Rick finds out, he's gonna be in trouble.
I was working for him.
Yeah.
I've had some tough things, but I got through them, and I'm so stoked to be here, Ryan. We'll stay in touch, and we'll do a good job of getting people good close looks at the Jazz and the Mammoth.
Yeah, and we're happy to help. I know that Austin and DA are always available to come on, and they're way better at the basketball stuff than I am. I should probably just let them talk. And like I said, we're just super fortunate that these guys chose to come to Utah and want to help hang a banner. They've both been super critical pieces of doing that in other places, and I'm excited for that here. And this Mammoth stuff Friday night. I mean, we got one tomorrow, but Friday night in Utah.
It's gonna be nuts.
It's gonna be great.
Hopefully the commission's out and we're here. So
love it. Ryan, we can't thank you enough. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Ryan Smith, owner of the Utah Jazz and the Utah Mammoth.